Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to 5x3 Radio. Rebecca and I are here on this lovely Thursday morning, the end of November, December tomorrow.
Yeah, it's actually afternoon, though.
Sorry, it's afternoon. I said morning and I meant afternoon. My brain's a little off. Diego's in Las Vegas this week.
It's always nice when somebody else is more off than I am now. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
So I've been like by myself in the house, you know, and I left a glass in the sink on Tuesday
I'm pretty
morning.
sure that's generally not allowed in your household.
It's not allowed in my house. No, not Tuesday morning. Monday evening.
It's still sitting there?
No. I did put it away, but I finished my tea and I had it on the counter and I put it in the sink and I thought to myself, I'm going to leave you right there because I can. And I took a picture of it and I sent it to him. And I showed people at the gym. I said, guess what? I said, Diego's out of town. Guess what I'm doing?
Getting wild and crazy over at your house.
I'm leaving a glass in the sink. And he's going to listen to this podcast. And he's going to go, and I'm glad that I wasn't there to witness that. So this is how I get crazy when my husband's away. You know, I leave glassware in the sink instead of putting it in the dishwasher. So we thought for this second to last podcast of the new year of the 2023 year, because I think we're going to do another one in December and then we're going to take a break for the holiday. So we'll return sometime in January for 2024. We thought we'd discuss a first meet for those people who are powerlifting, strength meet curious. We actually have a meet. I have a meet coming up on Sunday. This podcast will be out after the meet happens. But we had a meet, I should say then, Stronger Together, which was our strength meet that we do for Gilchrist Music Therapy Program. It's our fundraiser. We run it as we would run any powerlifting meet, but we do some different things that a standard powerlifting meet does do. We don't do those things. So Rebecca and I would like to talk about basically if you're meet curious and you're looking to do a powerlifting meet, we have some things. We have some thoughts. We have some suggestions as coaches.
Have to keep in mind. I think a lot of times when people get started with barbell training or starting strength type program, this idea kind of occurs to them at some point or other. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that it occurs to people, or maybe they have other lift buddies that are doing meets, or they're just immersed in a world where that happens, and maybe they have questions, and initially maybe think that that's something outside of their abilities or outside of the realm of possibility for them, but really it's not. And so, a first meet, there's plenty of room in that for people of all ability levels. So it's worth checking one out.
Yeah. And I don't,
it a try.
I think we never, like many of us, if we run, if we're not quote unquote like runners, like, really, advanced runners, but we do it because we like to run. It makes us feel good. They have no problem signing up for a race, right? Oh, I'm going to do a 5K. I'm going to go to the turkey trot. I'm going to do the 5K, down the street. But then if somebody's strength training, and they're, squatting and they're benching and they're deadlifting, and someone says, oh, have you ever thought about signing up for a meet? It's like, whoa, there's no way I could do that. I can't sign up for a meet. I'm not ready. And you actually are ready. If you're doing this in the gym, if you're pretty consistent with your training and you're enjoying your training and you have, you don't mind being in front of people, I should say. That's the biggest thing, right? Is when you're running, you run in front of people, but you're running by them. They kind of see you for a split second.
They're not watching you for the entire race.
Yeah, exactly. No one's following you with their camera on a bike. That'd be interesting. But that'd be interesting if someone did that. But
they do for the top tier runners.
Yeah, that's true. That's all the story, right? That's somebody who's already like, they know, where they stand as a runner. But
yeah, but that's also, I mean, interesting because like we have for running sort of two different categories that races fall into. There's like the top tier where you might have somebody with a camera on them the whole time and they're setting a world record.
Right.
And when somebody says to you, hey, you want to run a race, nobody ever really envisions that that's what you're talking about. They figure you're talking about like the neighborhood turkey trot.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, sure, I could do that. The fun run down at the school, no problem.
Yeah. It's and I think, but then when it comes to something like a powerlifting meet, it's like, whoa, no way. There's no way I can, I can hang with those guys. And it's not, no, we're not talking about hanging with like the top, the top people. We're talking about checking it out, seeing if competition is something that might be something you would enjoy. Many people like to sign up for meets because it gives them a goal, right? It gives them something to work towards when in the gym, right? It gives them a focus. I have members who like to compete, and I have many members who don't want to compete ever. And I never push anybody to compete, not compete. I encourage people if they want to try it, but no one ever has to do it. But if you're interested in do it, here are some things to think about. Here are some tips that we have, worked on ourselves and helped our clients with over the past couple of years. So this is in no order. I think we can just kind of like jump into anything.
We just sort of ramble on. But I think, similar to this concept that there's different stratospheres of races that a person might run in. Similarly, there's different types of competitions that someone might sign up for.
Yes.
And you're not going to end up at the, at the Arnold or something like that unless you're a top tier lifter.
Right. You have to be invited to that.
You wouldn't be invited, so that's not an issue.
There we go.
But there's plenty of like local level USAPW, USAPL.
Yeah.
Meets that you might sign up for.
Yeah.
And then there's also meets, and those meets mostly are going to be sanctioned. If it's a local level meet as opposed to a state level meet, they might be a little bit more lax about some of the rules. And we can talk about that in a minute. But then there's also, friendlies. So that, you're talking about the Stronger Together meet. That's a friendly meet.
Yes.
It's not sanctioned. No. There's, you have awards and people who place, first place or, whatever. But it's not set up like a regular powerlifting meet. It's two people lifting together to accumulate one score.
Yeah, and they're not lifting together, like they're not pressing at the same time, like pressing the same bar.
Both deadlifting the bar simultaneously.
Yes, I mean,
each person takes two lifts.
Yeah, we do run it like a powerlifting meet with many exceptions, right? And we'll talk about what do we mean by running it like a powerlifting meet, but we do all 4 lifts. Yeah, Stronger Together is a non-sanctioned meet. It's something that was started back in 2019 by a colleague of ours who had a gym in California, Nicole Rutherford. And I kind of held on to it after 2019 because I really liked having an end of the year event, something that my members could do, right? That any of my members could do if they wanted to. Not sanctioned means that their numbers don't get put into any system. They don't get invited to, go somewhere else. They're not setting a state record or world. It's just something for them to do. It's a charity event, so all the money goes towards to Gilchrist, and it's a nice way to kind of dip your toes into being in front of people. But we do run it like a meet, with the exception of commands and the fact that we do 4 lifts instead of, and that it's a combination of of 2 people's weights. Yes. So,
and as a friendly, similar to what I've experienced with local level USAPL meets, is the requirements about equipment are not as stringent.
Right, we don't wear singlets.
Yeah, so you can wear what you want. You don't have to show up in a singlet. It doesn't have to be an approved singlet.
Right,
you can use a belt that can be whatever sort of belt you like. It doesn't have to be an insert.
So before we jump into things, Rebecca, why don't you give a rundown for those who are like, okay, well, what's a powerlifting meet? Like, give me an idea of what do you do at a powerlifting meet, and then we can kind of jump into it as far as like what we suggest people do if they want to prepare for a first meet. So.
That sounds like a logical way to start. That sounds very organized, Emily.
Okay.
So a basic powerlifting meet, you're going to do 3 lifts. You're going to do squat, bench, and then deadlift. For each of those lifts, you get 3 attempts. So in total, you're performing 9 lifts in front of the judges and in front of the spectators. When you sign up for a meet, if it's a larger meet, there might be quite a few people signed up. Um, and you're going to be subdivided into categories based on weight. Also, there's male, female, and open in most meets. So sometimes I guess there's masters.
There's masters. There might be juniors.
Yeah.
And when Rebecca says weight, she means body weight. So a weight, your weight class. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to have a weight class. And those weight classes are usually like 8 to 10 pounds
difference. Yeah.
So, like if you're a smaller person, you're going to be competing against other smaller people.
Right.
Or a lighter weight person, you're going to be, competing against people who are of comparable weight. Whereas, for instance, with something like the strong woman competition, the lighter weight is 140 pounds. So if you're a 100-pound lifter, you're competing with somebody who has a 40-pound weight advantage, body weight advantage on you. So that's a thing, particularly for smaller people that's appealing about, a typical meet is the way that sort of gets subdivided by body weight. And so then once you get people subdivided like that, then you get divided into flights, right? So if it's a large meet, there might be 50 people signed up for the meet. They're not going to have all 50 people do their first attempt at squat before all 50 people get to start doing their second attempt at squat. That would be hours in between. So, they'll usually subdivide people into flights. I guess, what would you say? Like between 8 and 12 or 8 and 15 people per.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that, Diego and I, because we have 22 people at our meet, and so that's 11 people who would squat, right? And I said, should we divide them into 2 flights or keep it as 1 flight? And Diego said, keep it as 1 flight, because 11 is just on the top end of how many people you want in a flight. 6 would be too few. 8 would be 8 and 8, like 8 and 8 would be probably just like the sweet point. 6 is a little too few people, because you are going through all 3 attempts. So you do want to give enough rest time for people before their second attempt. Not too much, but I think, so probably 8 to 12 would be a good number. Okay. Yeah.
And that's, if you think about how much time you normally would take between if you had a top heavy set and a back off set, or if you were doing your volume day of lifts, how much time you would spend between sets, it generally ends up being approximately the same amount of time as you would normally rest between sets, between your first attempt, your second attempt, and your third attempt. And so you go through your 3 lifts for squat. The flight goes through. So if you're the first lifter, then you go through the next 12, and then you start again, and you do your second attempt, so on through squat. And then the same thing with bench. And then the same thing with deadlift. You finish with deadlift. So when you show up for a meet, depends on the meet. Some meets, like if it's a starting strength meet, you're going to weigh out. If it's a USA, I'm getting my letters all mixed up.
Yeah, USAPL. There's also USPA. There's like 2 different there. There's a couple. There are lots of different federations. USAPL is one of the more popular, positive, and probably one of the better ones out there, because of how they run their meets and
natural. Yeah,
exactly. And I would say that, if you're doing a strength lifting meet, which would be a kind of a starting strength meet, which is what Stronger Together is, except we had the bench in there. The strength lifting meets are different. You weigh out, but also there are no commands. So there's definitely there are lots of differences between that meet and a powerlifting meet. A powerlifting meet really is the more, I want to use the word popular, but the more common one. Strengthlifting is more with the starting strength. It comes from the CrossFit total, squat, press, and deadlift. So it has its own kind of place, but for powerlifting, which is what many people kind of, when they think of like going to a strength meet, they think of a powerlifting meet, they think of squat, bench, and deadlift, as Rebecca was describing. So that in essence, that is how a meet will run. You have,
And so for the powerlifting meet, you would weigh in,
right,
as opposed to weighing out with a strengthlifting meet. And so if you have a weigh in, that will usually be very early in the morning, maybe 7:00 in the morning. And then they generally will give you 2 hours to kind of chow down, and digest your food before the meet starts for the first flight of lifters, usually around 9:00.
Yeah.
And so you had mentioned commands. The people giving the commands are the judges. So whether you're at a powerlifting meet or a strengthlifting meet, you're going to have judges who are judging whether or not the lift is good.
Right.
So we can talk about the criteria for that. There's generally 3 judges, and they're either going to give you a red light or a green light. You're trying to get three green lights
or white lights,
right? White lights,
yeah. So
from your judges. So do you want to talk about the criteria for whether or not a lift is good, and what the judges are looking for?
So and when we get into talk kind of like our thoughts about what to do before, if you decide you want to do a meet, but as Rebecca said, there are commands, and so the judge in a powerlifting meet will actually verbally tell you when to start lifting. In the squat, they will verbally tell you to squat and then to rack the bar. So you have to listen very carefully for that. They're looking for, of course, are you below parallel? Are you coming up in control? Are you racking the bar in control? Are you listening to the commands? And that's a really big one in a powerlifting meet, because I've seen many people miss a lift because they don't listen and wait for the commands. They rush the command. They're so anxious and nervous. And when we get into talking about what you should do, I will say one of the things you should do is practice your commands. So if you decide you want to do a meet, you need to practice listening to somebody talk to you, because you're so in your head, possibly on your first competition, that if you miss that command, you literally could miss that lift. Even if you did it perfectly and it's the most beautiful lift you've ever done in your life, you don't get that. It's discounted. So you'll hear somebody say squat and rack. In the bench, you have to listen for 3 commands. You have to listen to the start command, the press command, and the rack command. And again, people will jump the commands for that. So again, you want to practice with that. Yes.
So explain the press command, because that one is different than what people might.
Yeah. So the press command is literally off the chest. Yeah. Powerlifting meet, you need to pause. So not only do you need to practice pausing your bench, but you need to practice listening to the command. So the start command is when the bar comes out of the rack, the judge will see you settle the bar over your shoulder joints. And then if they see it settled, they'll tell you to start. The start means you can start to bring the bar down to your chest. Once it's touching your chest and there's no movement on your chest, you have to wait for the press command from the judge, who sees the bar not moving and then tells you to press. You press, that means you drive the bar back off your chest. You need to make sure it's in control and stop yourself before you rack the bar, and you have to wait for the rack command. So it's really important to, if you decide you'd like to try a powerlifting meet, to work on your pause bench if you haven't been doing that. And that's something that you can learn on your own, or you can talk to a coach if you're working with a coach. But you need to, again, they're looking for control. They're looking for that control of the bar. So listening for start, which means bring the bar down, press, which means to press the bar back off the chest, and then rack, which means obviously to rack the bar. The deadlift is wonderful because it's just one command, down. So as long as you hear down, you're good to go. Deadlift, they're looking for legs locked out, hips forward, shoulders behind the bar. And especially they're looking for you to control the bar down to the floor. If you drop the bar, if you slam into the floor, if you put it down and then you let your hands go too soon.
Even if it slips out of your hand, which happens to me in
California. Even if it slips out of your hand, it's really hard to get a judge to give you a white light if any of that happens. So you want to make sure that your grip is solid and that you're controlling the bar all the way to the floor, and that once the bar touches the floor, you're still holding onto that bar just in case. And then you can let go, right? But it's important at a powerlifting meet to really listen for the judge, because like I said, I've seen too many people jump the commands because they're so anxious, and like have too much adrenaline soaring through them that they miss a command, and you can hear everybody go, "Ooh." And the person has no clue until they actually stand up and look and they see red lights. And they're like, what the hell? That was a perfect rep, perfect rep. And the person's like, yeah, you missed the start command. You're like, God damn it. So, and you feel so bad for the person, but it's like, those are the rules, and the rules. You can't go back to that. So that's in a sense how the lifts will run.
Yeah. So as far as, whether you get a white light or a red light, like there's following the commands, but there's also meeting certain criteria with the lift.
Right.
So if you were squatting and you got like form wise, what are judges looking for that might result in a red light?
Yeah. So obviously not going below parallel. So I mentioned that going below parallel.
So if you're squatting high.
So you're squatting high. If you start to come up and then you go back down, that's also, so let's say you hit below parallel, but you start coming up and somehow you kind of misguide the bar, and you start to go back down, and then you come up again, you're probably going to get red lighted because you went down.
You
need to continue upward motion. You stand up, but you don't actually finish completely and start to throw yourself into the rack. Even if you hear and you won't hear the rack command unless you are standing tall and finished the squat completely. Then you wait for the rack command. So if you come up and slam the rack in, well, you've missed the squat, you missed the rack command, and you've also lost control of the bar. So, I mean, really with the squat, they're just looking for below parallel and whether you have had a downward movement after you've gone up. Same with the bench. If there is a downward movement as the bar starts going up, even if the bar is going up, but then all of a sudden it starts to come down and then it goes back up again, and the judge sees that, it's going to be a red light. You have to keep your feet on the floor. Your head can come off the bench now. They do not. You don't have to have your head touching the bench in the bench, but the feet need to remain on the floor and the butt needs to remain on the bench.
Yeah, and your butt. And that's the funny thing I think about bench, because you've got the head judge and you got the two side judges.
Yeah.
And I've gotten one red light on bench because only one cheek came up.
Somehow one cheek comes up and the other one doesn't come up. So you have to make sure.
A little more leg drive on one side than the other.
Make sure your butt stays on the bench. Head can come off the bench. Both sides. Best to get implants now, so that your butt, if you don't have a big butt,
wear bike shorts.
That's right. Cushion that butt. Pump it up. And again, control the bar on upward motion only. Deadlift. I talked about letting go of the bar. They're guaranteed red lights if you do that. If you drop the bar or you put the bar down but let go too soon. You cannot hitch the bar. So hitching means resting the bar on your thighs. You can do that in strongman. You can hitch for 12 minutes if you want to, trying to get well, I can't do 12 minutes, but you can hitch up as a deadlift in a strongman competition. You cannot hitch a deadlift in a powerlifting meet. It has to be in control. And again, upward motion, right? If you stop the bar and it rests on your thighs, you're stopping the bar. It's like it starts to go down in a sense instead of going up. And if you don't have your shoulders behind the bar, I know that they're very picky about that, or your knees fully locked out. Yeah. So they're looking for, again, control. You want to show control of the bar and upward movement the entire time. That's, I mean, you can, there's a whole guidebook and there's many more rules, and it's online and you can look for it, but that's pretty much the gist of, what judges are looking for when they're looking, when they're looking to give you a white light or a red light. You might have pickier judges than other, and that's why there are 3 judges. Yeah. There are 3 judges because you might have a judge that calls depth and the other 2 are like, no, it was fine. So you get 2 white lights and a red, that's a good lift. You get 3 white lights, it's a good lift. You get 1 white light and 2 reds, that's a bad lift. So there are 3 judges, 2 out of 3, you're good. 3 out of 3, you're great. 1 out of 3, too bad.
And I guess I would add something that you were saying about like picky judges or whatever. I mean, you're also going to have a meet organizer. So if there's anything that's in the guidebook or the rules that you're not sure of, like I'm saying with a local meet, a lot of times the meet director is a little bit more lenient. So, if you've got a question about some of your equipment or, I don't know, like typically in the past when I was doing meets, I was still doing hook grip all the time on my deadlift. And so I would wrap or tape my thumbs a particular way to sort of protect that skin.
Yeah.
And you're not allowed to use sticky tape or anything like that. But I showed the judge ahead of time how I wrapped and asked if that was okay and, get the approval. Or, just if you've got a non-sanctioned singlet, double check and see if they'll let you compete anyway without it. If it's a smaller meet, they generally won't mind.
Right. And we'll talk. So singlets. So what is a singlet? A singlet is like a bike shorts. Basically, it's one piece. It's a one piece bike short.
Yeah.
It's like a half unitard.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a half unitard, right? It has straps. It's a wrestling garment, right? So if you've seen the wrestlers, that's a singlet. And yes, everybody has to wear one. And no, they're not attractive. But it's we want to see, the judge needs to be able to see the whole body, right? They need to be able to see the hip crease in the squat. They need to be able to see the butt on the bench for the bench. So there's a reason for that. Because it is a bike short, you do need to wear knee-high socks so that you don't bleed on the bar. Because people bleed on bars, and bleeding on bars is not good because it stops the meat, and then everybody has to clean the bar. We don't want to do that. So you want to make sure if you're going to, do a meet, definitely make sure that you know what you need to wear, and contact somebody if you're not sure about, if what you have is correct. But most general, like smaller meets are going to be like, they're not going to be as strict as if somebody's going for like a world record or something, then they're going to check everything. Definitely you can't wear a soft belt at a powerlifting meet. You do need to have a leather belt. I don't know if like some people, like if lever belts are okay or not okay, or, there has to be a certain, diameter for the lever belt. But lever belt or buckle usually is just fine, but a leather belt, not a soft belt. I think at Stronger Together, I'm allowing soft belts. I mean, we don't care. It's not one of those meets.
A friendly meet.
It's a friendly meet. Yeah.
Participation.
Yeah. It's a friendly meet. So we're looking, but at powerlifting meets, you do need to make sure that you have the right equipment. I know things have changed since I've done one.
They have changed in terms of because my belt that I have is actually no longer sanctioned.
Okay.
So if I wanted to do a meet now, I would have to buy a whole new belt.
So why is yours not sanctioned? Why isn't it sanctioned?
I mean, doesn't it just come down to whether or not a company has paid
really?
The fees? I think so. I mean, there's nothing different about my belt now, and my belt compared to the ones that are sanctioned.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's anything substantially different. It's just that certain brands have paid a fee to be on the list.
Yeah. So definitely address that. Make sure you look into that.
If you're going to do, a meet that's a sanctioned meet, make sure you're familiar with what the equipment guidelines are.
Right.
And it might also be things like, I mean, yikes, you're not supposed to do this, but I always deadlift barefoot or in my socks, which is something that is not allowed in meets. You either need to wear your shoes, or you can wear deadlift slippers, or you can wear.
Yeah. So you have to wear something on your feet, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not not totally bare feet, but they also don't want you to just wear your knee-high socks.
Right. So you have to have
something,
slippers. Right.
Something on your feet, either deadlift slippers or chucks or your squat shoes or something like that. And then whatever equipment it is that you are meant to be using in the meet, that's what you want to be practicing with. And right down to the singlet. So, the week or so before you're headed out to your meet, if it's one that is sanctioned and you have to wear a singlet, practice your lifts in the singlet. It's going to feel weird. Get used to that feeling. Get over that while you're in the comfort of your regular training setting, rather than trying to get used to that at the same time that you're trying to get used to your first meet.
It's interesting. I don't think people really think about that, like wearing basically your costume before your performance. And see, as a dancer,
you sound like a dancer, yeah.
As a dancer, I view a meet very much like a performance. It's a performance.
It's your dress rehearsal. Your dress rehearsal the week before.
Your dress rehearsal the week before is your, wearing your singlet, working up to your opener, maybe your second attempt kind of thing, going through all 3 lifts, making sure that you know exactly what you're going to do. And that's your dress rehearsal. And then the performance, anything can happen in performance. And it's just like a live performance, which is kind of what's exciting about it. What I always, when I think about dancing, I think about powerlifting or just, competition in general. I'm like, it's just like dance. It's just like a dance performance. And you get one shot to show off yourself, right? Most dance performances, most companies have, multiple shows, but as a, semi professional dancer in Baltimore, I would always get like maybe 1 or 2 shows. So I'd have all this rehearsal time and all this practice time to just show off once or twice. So it really had to matter, right? Because you get one shot. But you want to practice. And wearing the singlet is kind of part of it. I rehearsed yesterday for my meet on Sunday, or since this has already happened, since this podcast is coming out after the meet, but I actually did put on the clothes I'm going to wear at the meet. I did because I'm wearing 2 knee braces underneath my leggings because of my surgery knee, which when the deadlift gets heavier, my knee kind of starts to go, what are you doing? But I found a way to keep it nice and, give it some good compression. So it's not my knee sleeves. It's like 2 little knee, like an ace brace, right? But there are 2 of them. So I wanted to make sure that it was okay under my leggings, which I haven't been wearing as I've been training. So yesterday I put everything on to just make sure that everything felt good and everything worked, and it did. So there is something to doing that. And I think it's great that you brought that up.
And another component to that too, with the dress rehearsal, you always have an audience, which is something else to consider when you're going through your dress rehearsal for your meet the week before. If you are used to lifting by yourself in the basement and you're not used to having people watching you or having people in an audience, or spectators or whatever, then, pull some friends in, pull some family in, just get used to having eyes on you while you're doing your lift. And in particular, if you're doing not a powerlifting meet, but if you're doing a strength lifting meet, so a meet that has squat, overhead press, and deadlift, as opposed to a powerlifting meet, which has the squat, bench, and deadlift. The overhead press is the lift where you're most likely to end up accidentally making awkward eye contact with spectators. And if you're not expecting that, it can be a little bit off-putting, or it can be a little disconcerting. So in a strength lifting meet, when you know that you're going to be doing your overhead press facing a group of people, it's helpful to find a spot on the wall above everybody's head and make that your focal point. So you want to practice doing your overhead press basically with like people in your face, not right up in your face, but like, close enough that you can kind of get used to finding a spot or looking through them or looking beyond them.
Not just the press, but the deadlift. I think,
I didn't really ever have problems with the deadlift. I start out looking at the floor and I just end up keeping my eyes down at that spot on the floor.
I think it's you might be, so be mindful of that too. Like if you're looking out, you may end up like, if you look out, you catch somebody's face or something like that. But the press, that's why I teach people to look up. I'm like, just once you grab the bar, you look down and then you look up right away. So I never see anybody's face when I press because I'm looking so far up on the wall in front of me. But having somebody watch you, especially if you're training by yourself, is a good idea. So now that we're going to getting into, okay, that's the powerlifting meet. That's how a powerlifting meet runs. If you're doing a strength lifting meet, it runs similar, but you're doing a press and there are no commands with a strength lifting meet, right? They're still looking for the same things. They're just not going to talk. They're not going to give you any commands, but they're still looking for control of the bar. They're looking for you to keep your butt on the bench. Not butt on the bench. They're looking for you to not fall, lose your balance in the press, the overhead press, right? Control the bar, always control the bar, right? Just no commands. But we're talking about a powerlifting meet, so if we'll stick with that because that's a more common one. Why don't we go through a list of kind of things that the do's and don'ts of preparing for it. So you signed up for it. And you know that you have to get a singlet, you know that you've got to have a leather belt, and you understand that they're going to be flights and that they're going to be commands. So what are some do's and don'ts about preparing for this? We're like 8 weeks out now from let's just say a meet.
Oh, I don't know. How are you going to, I wasn't thinking of do's and don'ts.
Oh, I think
I was just, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think my first don't is don't try to fit into a lower weight class. This is your first meet. I would say pick that weight class that you fit into. Like if you're 155 pounds, you find the weight class that is between 140 and 160 pounds, and that's the weight class that you're in. Don't try to like all of a sudden diet and lose weight because I need to be lighter. No, you don't. This is your first meet. You don't even know if you're going to like this.
I mean, and I think, I wasn't really thinking so much in terms of do's and don'ts. I was just thinking in terms of like how to frame your experience. And that sort of fits in, with what you're saying.
Right.
Like when you're going to do your first meet, ideally, what I hope for clients or for people when they're doing their first meet is that they have a positive experience.
Yes.
That they come out of it feeling like, yes, that was great. I did really well, feeling successful, feeling proud of what they've done. So part of that is just sort of going and experiencing it rather than having really strict, rigid, or unreasonable expectations about how they're going to perform.
And I think it's more, I want to make some people like to read and read a lot about something that they're going to do. I want people to don't get too involved. I think, like really like go down a rabbit hole of powerlifting. Mm-hmm. If you decide you want to do a competition, I would also say, talk to a coach. If you don't have a coach right now, make sure you try to reach out to somebody to maybe help you or just give you some guidance as to what to do, because that person will be able to really help you kind of step by step, figure out what your numbers are, what you want to do, kind of give you a little bit of guidance, as you're preparing for the meet.
Like a coach, or even if you just have a friend who's done powerlifting meets,
exactly.
or is powerlifting curious, whatever, and going to a meet with, either by yourself or with someone who has a little experience with the meet, to see how it runs. If you have an opportunity to do that beforehand, to just be familiar with the format, to be more comfortable with the overall structure of the meet is a good thing to do.
Definitely need that, because you don't want to, I'd say for somebody who's doing a meet for the first time, I wouldn't worry too much about their program, right? I wouldn't try to, I've got to do an 8-week. I'd say keep training as you're training. And this is what I've done with some of my clients who are new to lifting and never done a meet before. And maybe they're doing Stronger Together, is just keep the training program as is. And then we start to make some small changes as we get closer to the date, maybe about a month out. We may start bringing down the volume a bit so that they start to kind of recover a little bit more, and they start to practice singles, because you're not doing reps at a powerlifting meet. You're doing 3 singles. You're doing a first attempt, a second attempt, and a third attempt, meaning that your weights are going up each time, ideally. And you want to work on practicing those heavy singles, because a single is very different than doing a set of 5. That first rep has to count, right? You might do a set of 5, and the first rep might be a little high, and the second rep is lower, and the third rep is lower. Well, you get one chance at a meet. So practicing heavy singles is going to be needed in order for you to get comfortable doing one solid good rep that is in the bag, controlled, and can rack it. But I don't think there's any reason to completely change your program, leading up to that until you're about 4 weeks out, right? And then you start to figure out, okay, where are my weights for this meet? What do I want to do at the meet? What does my coach think I can do? And then have a discussion with the coach as to what weights should I do, because I think that for a first time meet, you don't want to miss any lifts.
Yeah. Your goal, right, is to go 9 for 9.
Right.
9 good lifts out of the 9 good attempt, or out of the 9 attempts.
Right. You have 3 lifts with a squat, 3 with a bench, and 3 with a deadlift. You have your opener, your second attempt, and your final attempt, which is usually the heaviest weight that you're going to lift. And ideally, you want to go in there knowing exactly what you're doing, because that way you're going to have a successful meet. You're going to feel good. You're already nervous. You're already a little bit hesitant because, is this the right thing for me to do? Do I know, what am I getting myself into? Am I going to love it? Am I going to hate it? Am I going to have a good time? Who's going to be there? Am I going to make a fool of myself? I mean, all these things are running through your head. So, you're trying something new, and it's good to try something new, and it's good to try something hard and kind of step out of your comfort zone sometimes, but have the comfort of knowing that you can successfully lift the weights that you're lifting. I think that's most important.
The two goals I would try and set for people going into their first meet is to go 9 for 9 and have fun.
Yeah.
And generally I think, if it's your first meet and you go in with a sense of curiosity, and, enjoying the experience as opposed to putting a lot of pressure on yourself to get a particular weight, then I think it's pretty hard to do a meet without coming away from it thinking it was fun. Like, some of the nicest, most supportive, encouraging people that you will ever meet are going to be there,
right,
and cheering you on, even though they've never met you before.
Right.
And so it can be a really positive experience. But going in your first time, you maybe have some questions or concerns, or you're not really sure what to expect. If you don't actually really know how you're going to respond in that situation. Some people get an adrenaline rush and, really do well, outperform their expectations, and other people get, just turn into a bundle of nerves.
Yeah.
So, meat jitters are real. And you may be one of those people, so you just kind of have to do the meet to find out, and then sort of figure out, what to do for the next meet, how to adjust for the next meet. And that's like what you're talking about. The next meet, the second meet, is the one where you might, think more critically about adjusting your program weeks or months out. That's the second meet is when you might think more critically about what weight class you want to try and be in, or setting different goals for yourself in terms of hitting PRs, that sort of thing. Right. So if you're gonna aim to go 9 for 9, like you're saying, going in knowing what you're gonna do for your lifts, I think sort of the general rule of thumb that you guys gave me for my first meet, which is what I use with my clients and anyone I'm working with that's starting with the first meet, is think about your first attempt as something that you can do for a set of 5. Something that you can do comfortably for a set of 5. So if you're talking about RPE, maybe at like an 8 or 8.5, and you're not trying to, set off any fireworks with that first attempt. You're just trying to establish for yourself a successful presence at the meet, build your confidence. You want to finish that first attempt feeling confident, feeling strong, feeling good about what you're doing. Plan your second attempt for something that you can do for a set of 3. Reasonably challenging set of 3, and your third attempt, something that you probably already have done for a top single in training. So that there's no question in your mind when you get up there in front of any of the spectators and judges, no question in your mind that you can do that lift. And then if you do find that you're one of those individuals who has to cope with meat jitters, you've got that in your back pocket. You can do it. You've done it before. And then you just go ahead and prove to yourself what you already knew you could do, but in front of people.
Yeah, I like that. I think you can also think that maybe you've been training for a couple of years, but you've never done a meet before. You probably could do, I would say, your opener. It could probably be anywhere between a 3 and a 5, I think, rep. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's more like what you can always hit. That's kind of like what you want to make sure you base, that first opener on. It's like something that you've done it. You've done it, and you've done it, and you've done it. You know it. Like if someone says, go over there and squat 190, you could do it. All right. That's what your opener is. That's what your opener is. But it's, and for some people, I think that I have some clients who are like, you know what, I want to go for a third attempt. Like I want to surprise myself. I'm like, fine, go for it. Because I know that their personality is one that, let's say if they miss it, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's like they tried it. And then for another lift, they're like, I need to just go boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? Like they're excited about one lift, and the other one, they're like, I know what my 3 lifts are, and I'm not going to decide to waver between the, any of them. But this one, I want to kind of shoot for that. Like, I think I can do it. It's almost like I said, well, it's either you do it and maybe the second attempt isn't what you wanted. So then you can bypass the third. But if you are really going in for something for the first time, it really is a good idea to just calculate a little bit more, be on the what's the conservative side. Yeah. Be conservative, because you're still going in and doing something that you've never done before. And it feels really good to get up. It feels good to get up and do something. It may not feel very good to get up in front of and do something in front of a lot of people, because I think that's the biggest thing why people don't compete, is they don't want to do it in front of people. They're just doing something in front of people makes them nervous. And I can totally understand that. I get that. And the same nerves that I had dancing, when I get in front of people and to dance, I had the same nerves when I get in front of people to lift. I love it. It's an adrenaline rush, but my heart is in my throat. It doesn't matter. I've done it before. I've been on that stage 1,000 times. My heart still goes into my throat every time I walk into that stage, or before I walk on the stage. And then once I'm on the stage, I'm totally fine. And the same thing happens with me with a meet. And for some people, nothing happens. It's just,
Yeah, and a lot of that. But a lot of those nerves, I mean, you got to, you keep in mind too, like you're saying, they dissipate once you start doing
Absolutely.
the thing you know how to do. So once you get started, then a lot of those nerves that you feel when you're driving up or when you walk into the meet sort of go away. It's sort of the sitting around and waiting.
Yes. Yeah.
It's sitting around waiting for the meet to start where it's really nerve-wracking.
So we've talked about obviously the meet. We talked about some things to think about, how to approach your training, how to approach,
you had things structured as like do's and don'ts.
Yeah. I mean, I said the don't try to fit into a different lower weight class. Like, don't worry about that. That's because you may not even like this. So you may hate this and be like, I'm never competing again. But I'm glad I tried it. And I realized it wasn't for me. Don't worry about trying to, hit new weights or prove yourself at the meet. You've already proved yourself. You're there. You're showing up and doing something that people don't normally wouldn't want to do.
I like the way you said that when you're talking about your clients and their personalities. And, for a lot of people, the recommendation is going to be, do something you can do. Aim to get 9 for 9.
Yeah.
But, there are some clients or some circumstances where, aiming for a PR is appropriate. And maybe that's because of their personality. Maybe that's because of their circumstances. Like I just had a client who did his first meet, which was a friendly. It was at Sully's gym.
Nice.
It was a deadlift competition in honor of John Clausen Sr.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah. And so my client, John Clausen Jr., that was his first meet. Nice. It was a deadlift only meet. And he wanted to PR on his third attempt. And he's been lifting for a number of years. He's an experienced lifter, but just has never done a meet before. And so based on what I know of his training, his recovery, his goals, sort of ran through a couple different lift calculators, what might be reasonable for a PR, and sort of, backed his training up a couple months back and sort of going through a couple cycles to hit that, what we thought was a reasonable PR attempt at the time of that meet. And so he did that, and it was super cool. And still it was like a more conservative PR than maybe I might have suggested if it was his second meet. Still, he did really well.
That's awesome.
So yeah, knowing your client, knowing the circumstances. And I mean, in that case, like if you're a person who gets to compete in a meet with your, I think it was his father's 97th birthday. Yeah. And you're competing in that same meet with your,
you do it.
There's going to be some feels with that give you some adrenaline.
Oh, yeah. That's a meet you're going to have to, you go all out in. You go all out in, and I mean, even the, our meet Stronger Together. I mean, I like that. I've done like meet PRs they're not training PRs, but they're meet PRs kind of thing. Like, right. Like I've done it in training, but I've never done it in a meet. So that's, but that's somebody that this is me, like having done this before. I've done this before. My clients who are doing this for the first time, some of them have done a strong woman contest. So they're kind of used to being in front of people. They're used to training. This is now something a little bit different. It's, one rep. It's a little bit more serious in the sense of like how they're judging, how they're being judged, because the rules are a little stricter. But there's this kind of feeling of like, I'm really excited about this. And I want to be able to try something different. And I don't care if I, miss or not. And I'm like, fine, that's fine, because it's the excitement of just doing it. There's definitely an excitement of getting out there and doing it, because because it's relaxed, because there are no commands, because there are no singlets, because there's nothing like a powerlifting meet would have you do, which makes you a little bit more restricted, right? It's a little bit more relaxed. But for a powerlifting meet, it's a good idea to be conservative, because you have to save your energy. Here, we're doing 2 lifts only. There, you're doing 3 lifts. So you have to remember it's going to be a much longer meet than a meet that's only doing like deadlift only, or you're only benching only. And there are meets like that too. And that's not a bad thing to also try out first. If you don't want to do a full meet, they have meets that are push-pull, meaning bench and deadlift, and you can do both bench and deadlift, or choose to bench or deadlift. And I've done a couple push-pull meets, and I've only benched in those. And that's a nice way to try a competition out without the worry of doing all 3 lifts. You can do just 1, you can do just 2, and you can still go through the same procedure of got to get a singlet, got to make sure I have the right shoes, got to make sure I follow the rules, make sure, I practice heavy singles, make sure I practice my commands. So everything is there, but the pressure's off on, I've got to do 3 lifts, whereas I only have to worry about 1 or 2. So that's a nice way to kind of dip your toes into competition, which is like, okay, I'm just going to do just 1 lift, and then maybe I'll try 2, and then maybe I'll go for the full meet. I totally forgot about push-pull until you brought up the deadlift only meet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a really nice way to, to dabble in it as well, because again, the pressure's off of doing all 3. That's what Stronger Together is nice about. You get to pick the 2 lifts that you want to do,
Well, to an extent, you can't do both upper body ones, right?
No, but you got to pick like 1 lower body and 1 upper body that you like,
and then you have to find a partner who's willing to do the other 2 that
exactly. But yeah, no, I think there are some, I don't want to mean like do's and don'ts as in like, this is what you should do, this is what you don't want to do. I just think people don't go down a rabbit hole of reading everything you can and getting into your head of what you need to do. Yeah. Just
sometimes more information is not helpful.
Seriously, believe me, I know. I have
clients. Like my kids just had their wisdom teeth out, and they were like researching what to expect afterwards, and like the aftercare, and then like they're getting nauseous and stuff.
And then you diagnose yourself with cancer.
Too much information.
You're like, oh, I probably have cancer now, and that's what always happens to me. Diego's like, have you been on WebMD? Maybe. I think I have. No, you don't. I'm like, no, I think I do. I think I've diagnosed myself with. Stop reading. He knows when I'm looking at stuff. Like, what are you looking at? Nothing. You're diagnosing yourself again. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
So same thing with a powerlifting meet. Like you can go down there. Well, so-and-so did this, and then there's blood coming out of their nose. And I'm like, okay, no, you don't need to worry about that. Just don't, so it's, go in there confident with what you can do. Don't try to change anything, and if you don't have a coach, try to reach out to somebody who's maybe done a meet before and can help you, give you some guidance, because that really trying to do that on your own is going to be tough. It's just going to be tough. It's just always good to have somebody else there to help you. The day of the meet, actually, I wanted to bring this up too, because I think if you don't have somebody with you, if you go to a meet and you decide you want to go by yourself because you don't want anybody there,
anybody that you know.
Right, anybody that you know. You have to be mindful then to write down what you're going to do, to have a real plan, right? To have your plan of attack, because you're going to be asked to turn in to tell them what your opener is going to be, because they have there's the judges, and then there are also people there who are computing everything, right? Putting everything in the system. So you need to make sure that they have your opener, your first weight, your first attempt. And then after you do that, you have to go up to them and tell them what your second attempt is going to be. Now that's the a handler, like your coach might do that for you. But if you don't have somebody there, you need to know, you have to have the wherewithal to go up and say, okay, my second attempt is going to be this. And the same thing for the third attempt, because that's how you keep things moving. They don't want to chase after you. If you don't do it and you don't go up to them, they're going to just bump you to the next weight up. They're not going to, and you might have wanted it, 10 pounds up, and they're only going to bump you 5 pounds up or so, or, 2.5 kilos up, because they haven't heard from you. So you have to think about how that you're going to be the one giving them your next attempts, or they're going to just bump it up on their own.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I usually think about that not as the preparation the day of, but the day before. Like when you're packing your bag, you pack your bag
Definitely.
at least the day before. Maybe even you work on packing your bag the week before. So, if you don't have a packing list, you have time to, think about it and remember what you forgot. But one of the things I always pack is a note card that has my first attempt. My second attempt is often a range, and the same with the third attempt. So, if the first attempt feels fabulous, then I might choose my second attempt at the higher end of the range. If it feels really slow and uncomfortable, then I might go with the lower end of the range for the second attempt and third attempt. When you're figuring out those weights, it's important to know if the meet is going to be in pounds or kilos.
Yes.
Often, like if it's a powerlifting meet, they're going to be in kilos.
Yes.
I cannot do that math in my head. That's why I do the note card, because I need those numbers written down for me beforehand.
Yep.
Because when you are finished doing your first attempt, I don't know, you're a little oxygen deprived or something. You got your system is on, high alert, adrenaline, all that sort of stuff. Calming for me, math challenge, calming down and trying to do a math problem at that point is just not even feasible.
Yep.
So, I have that sort of written down. And then the only factor that I consider is, did it feel easier than I expected or harder than I expected, and choose one or the other end of the range. If it's a first meet and you know what you're going to do and those numbers are already set for you, that makes the process even easier. And then along those lines too, if it is a meet that's going to be in kilos, a lot of times the whole gym will be in kilos.
Yes.
So you need to know your warm up in kilos
yes.
as well as pounds.
Yes.
So write that all out too.
Yes.
Write out how you plan to do your warm up. You probably, I generally train in pounds, and I know what I'm going to put on the bar for my warm ups for squat. But if I show up in a new gym, in a new place, the day of a meet, and look around and everything is in kilos, I don't know what to do. And I've been in that situation where and this is what I'm talking about, where people are so friendly. Like there was a handler from another gym who had that sheet all listed out in kilos. And I was like, what's that lifter doing for their first attempt? And, she told me, and I was like, can you tell me the kilo weights so I can do her same warm up? That's how So I mean, thinking that stuff through, and, knowing if kilos is not your math strong suit, that you want to think about that beforehand.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to, that's a big part of it. You have to just make sure that you know what the equivalency is. If it's, if you're working in pounds, you have to, there's a wonderful, piece of paper, a paper on the USAPL. It has the whole conversion chart.
There's a conversion chart, and there's apps that will do it for you. But I get, personally, and maybe this is somebody listening too, I get in a situation like that, and maybe I'm able to use that converter under normal circumstances. I get in a strange gym under meet circumstances, and it's like my brain freezes. So I have to have that
anything
stuff out.
Anything you can do ahead of time is ideal. I would, and just, that's why it's easy if you just have all your lifts written down, or if you have somebody there to help you, they have your lifts written down, and all they're doing is telling the person what you're going to do next. Because it's one less thing you have to worry about. But if you're there by yourself, just know what you're going to do, have it written down so you can right away tell the judge this. And, be I know I know it can be crazy and kind of busy, but be mindful of where you are, right? Just be mindful, be alert, so that you can have the wherewithal to walk up to the judge, so that no one's chasing you, because we have to chase people at the Stronger Together meet all the time. I'm like, and Diego goes to the rules and says, when you're done, go up to the head judge, or somebody needs to go up and give the numbers. And all the time we're like, so and so, what are you doing next? Because we're gonna just bump you up if you don't. I think there was that. I'm trying to think of what you were saying as you're talking about kilos or pounds. But I think it went out of my head. Yeah, it can be very fun. I think that doing something that's not, that's simple the first time, like don't try to go out to like a nationals meet. Don't sign up for a meet that's like nationals. Try to find something local if you can. Try to find something that maybe isn't sanctioned. Maybe try to find a push pull. Find something that is something that is a good timing for you, that you can make it. It's not too far. You don't have to drive 5 hours to get there and stay overnight. Like that's a big deal. That's some real commitment. That's why I like doing the meets, the local meets that I do. That's why I like the strongwoman contest, because it's not sanctioned. It's a chance for people to dip their toes in a strongwoman, Stronger Together, not sanctioned, something for people can kind of like test out. Do they want to compete in front of other people? And they have to prepare for it as like a strength meet, except they don't have to worry about 2 lifts. It does give people a nice focus and goal, and I think that's why Manny has enjoyed competing all this time, because it has given him a focus, a training focus. There is that, and I think sometimes some people might need a little push, and this might be just the push that they need to get in the gym.
I mean, and you and I have talked about this in the past before, like that some people are process oriented and some people are outcome oriented. And so somebody who's outcome oriented, the whole idea of a meet is probably going to be more appealing to them.
Right.
They might be more naturally drawn to that idea. But for people like you and I, who are a little bit more process oriented, there is still so much of value to be gained from participating in a meet. Like you were saying before about like, pushing yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like a little outside my comfort zone, actually a lot outside my comfort zone a lot of times to compete in a meet.
Right.
But you couldn't find a friendlier, more supportive environment to be pushing yourself outside your comfort zone.
True. I think the same thing with strongman competitions. I mean, they're always so great. You walk in there and everyone is, everyone's there to support you. They're not up there. The people out who are watching you, they are not up there. So anything you do is amazing. They hear a weight on the bar. They're like 250 pounds. She's going to pick that up. Oh my God. I mean, it's like, it's just, we're all weird. We're all weird for just even being up there and doing it. So it's, anything you do is fantastic. And it is kind of fun to perform in front of people. I say that I think it's fun. Other people may not think it's fun. And again, you don't have to ever compete. It's not like, and someone should never force you to do a competition, but for those who are meet curious, I like that, as Rebecca said, then this is a nice way to try it out. And see if it's something that you'd like to do. And Manny just competed in his 6th meet and said it's his last one for now. As he says, for now, it's his last one. We'll see if he decides to compete again. He's somebody who's gone down that rabbit hole. He has gone down the rabbit hole of powerlifting. He's really gotten into it. Other people have, dabbled in it, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's cool. Did it once, not going to do it again. And then there's weightlifting, and that's a whole other category that we don't even know. We don't even need to worry about.
There was one other thing that we were sort of thinking about that we haven't talked about, which is like food for the meet day.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You wanted to mention that. Talk about that.
Yeah. Like if you have, if you're doing a meet where you have to weigh in, you're probably not going to eat until after you weigh in.
Yeah, or you might.
If it's your first meet, you might, but like generally, if you go to a powerlifting meet where there's a weigh-in, people will weigh in, and then they'll sit there for the next 2 hours and drink like gallons of water and eat giant breakfasts.
I think those people probably have just had worked on making weight, and they're done that. But if you don't want to worry, if you don't worry about making weight, eat, don't eat. I don't eat. It's not that I need to worry about making weight, and I'm a way out with the Stronger Together. But even when I've done, powerlifting meets or the push-pull meets, I can't eat before a performance. So I can't eat before I do a competition. So for me, eating is like the last thing I want to do because my stomach's so nervous anyway. But for some people, they need to eat breakfast. Just eat early enough that it's not going to come up when when you lift.
Yeah. And also eat familiar foods.
Yes.
Eat the things that you're used to. Like if you decide that you're going to do something brand new and different by competing in a meet, don't make that the same morning that you decide to try a brand new recipe for breakfast and you're not sure how your stomach's going to respond.
No, just eat. As far as like bringing food to the meets, I think everybody just needs to, you bring what you can stomach. Bring what you think you need, bring Gatorade if you need more than just water, drink water. I tend to probably not eat. I don't eat during a meet. Strongman contest, I do. I try to like eat after every event because it's a long, long day and the events are, weird and crazy. And I tend to eat like Snickers bars. I tend to eat like chocolate.
Yeah. So if you're going to eat between a meet, right, still general rule of thumb, stick with things that you're familiar with, that your body's familiar with.
Yeah.
When you're talking about a Snickers bar, like the idea there, I mean, you're not getting hangry, but the idea there, I think, is like you get some quick sugar,
that's it. Exactly.
Some quick energy, some carbs, just things that you're familiar with. If you think about like if you had a long training session, when you get towards the end of an NLP and your training sessions are 90 minutes or something like that. If you're a person who needs to have some food in there in the middle, whether it's, some sort of a shake or a candy bar or a protein bar or something like that, then, maybe you would need to bring some food for during the meet. You probably want to have something around for after the meet.
Yes, definitely. And I think that this is different from a strong woman or strongman competition where it can be a longer day, even though you're only doing 5 events and they're only like a minute long. You're most likely outside, possibly. You could be inside. You don't know what the weather's like. When we do it in summer, it's hot. A lot of my women may not be drinking enough or eating enough. And I think those competitions, you really do want to make sure you're fueling yourself like constantly because it's a very different event than a powerlifting meet, which is usually inside, controlled environment, controlled heat, controlled, cooling, and you're not running with weights. You're not picking up weird things and doing as many reps as you can. You're doing one rep. And then you're doing 1 rep again. So it's a very different, it requires a different sort of energy level. And so what you're putting in your body and what you're putting out, so I think you can definitely have food, but you don't need to be stuffing yourself, I think, throughout, unlike with a strongman competition where you want to make sure you're constantly eating and drinking because you're waiting for a long time in between events, possibly. For big groups to go, and just the sheer nature of the events and possibly when they're being held and where they're held, because outside, inside, it could be anywhere. So that's something to think about too. And
if you, like you're saying, you're describing, if you happen to be a person with a nervous stomach who doesn't do well eating just before a performance or a meet or something like that, have a bedtime snack, have maybe a little bit bigger dinner the night before.
Exactly.
So you've got a little bit more fuel in your system when you get started.
That's going to be me. That's going to be me. That's going to be me because I'm going to wake up on Sunday. And I'm not gonna eat anything. I might have coffee, if that, so, but I don't even know because I get nervous before anything. Even before I run events, I don't eat. I don't eat before a strongman contest.
I can't do it.
My adrenaline, I'm on adrenaline the whole time. My stomach's just a mess because I'm nervous. So in a good way, but it's still nerves. That's about what I mean. I think I've kind of had definitely listed everything that I've thought about or, as far as like a first time meet goes, you don't need to, like I said, go down that rabbit hole of powerlifting. Just keep it simple. Fun. Keep it simple. Talk to somebody who's done one before or can help you and guide you through one if it's something that you want to look into, and find something that's close enough. That's fairly local, so you don't having to make a real commitment of a drive to it. This is coming after Stronger Together, so I won't go into my whole spiel about Stronger Together because this is coming after it. But hopefully Stronger Together was a success. I'm sure it was. You can always donate to Gilchrist. I mean, we don't need to have a fundraiser to do it. So if you did not get a chance to make a contribution to the music therapy program at Gilchrist Hospice, you certainly can. And you can go directly to their website. I'll have the link in the show notes. And you can always make a donation to the music therapy program any time of year. That is all from us here at 5x3 Radio for this week. We'll be back with our last episode of 2023, and then taking a break for a little bit, and we'll return sometime in January. I don't know, mid-January, end of January, something like that, when the holidays are over and Rebecca and I can find time to get together to talk. But we will be back in another couple of weeks with our last episode, and we hope you will join us then. If you have any questions or comments or thoughts about anything we've talked about today or in the past, you can always reach us or reach me at Emily@5by3.com or Rebecca at
cornerstonestrengthmaryland@gmail.com.
And before we go, I wanted to let Rebecca know that I got, as always, a lovely note from George.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
Thank you, George, for your contribution to the music therapy program. This is a gentleman who Rebecca has worked with, I've met him, and he has been a contributor to our fundraising efforts for the past couple of years. And I thank him again, and he wishes you well. And so thank you, George. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll be back soon. Thanks, Rebecca.
Take care.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Thanks for listening to 5x3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5x3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.